Yeah, so they're trying to serve me dinner. So yeah. So my name is Obinna Okerekeocha. I'm Nigerian, obviously. Igbo. From Abia State. Lived in Lagos all my life. Was born and bred in Lagos. Raised in Lagos. I'm the first of 5 boys. So my father is an artist. My mother worked in public health for about 35 years. And they're both training. I take after my father, who himself was an artist in his time, and he provides the really strong influence that has really, been a stronghold on my life. Because at the age of 8, I decided I was going to be an artist. After I won the best art student in primary school and prize giving day, and the question was asked to each of the students, what are you going to be when you grow up? And you know what you expect to hear: lawyer, doctor, an accountant, an engineer. And it gets to me, and I say I want to be an artist. So. Yeah, I made up my mind to be an artist because my dad was best graduating art student from Yaba College of Tech in 1975. Won pretty much all there was to win as an art student, and he then again, when the country was essentially about meritocracy, he had 2 employment letters essentially waiting for him. So Lintas, Lagos, and I think OBM, OBM, Benton and Mayfair, they were top of the line agencies at the time. So he opted for Lintas. The Lintas was about the biggest advertising agency in West Africa. In fact, Lintas was the first ad agency, in pretty much in Southern Sahara, Southern Saharan Africa. They started in 1949 as West Africa Publicity and walked through the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Nigeria until they were bought over by a Nigerian conglomerate, essentially. So Lintas was pretty much the biggest company ad agency, and they handled all the accounts from Guinness to Nigerian Breweries, Star, all the big household name brands, Unilever brands, Close Up, Locks. Locks or Joy now, but Omo, so pretty much, and
yeah. I think they were responsible for that Chica adverts. Omo.
What brand? Yeah. Oh yeah, Super Blue Omo. Yeah. It was them. From then down to the comparison days when the brighter colors versus faded colors. Lintas was pretty much the household name. So I grew up, as a kid. My dad would take me to the studio then in Ikoyi. Yes, when Lintas used to be on Olowo Road, and I would go into the studio, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to do anything else in my life. And he had a lot of his work in the house from school. So I had the privilege of seeing a lot of his work because he kept back a lot of his work from school. So that inspired me, So essentially, I after secondary school, I went to the University of Nigeria and I read fine and applied art, specialized in painting, and practiced for a bit. Did a little bit of painting. My NYSC, where I taught fine arts at the military secondary school in Ogun State. Then after NYSC, I pretty much jumped into advertising because it was pretty much what was the next big thing to do. So I started working at McCann Erickson, which is popularly known as STV McCann, as a junior art director. So I was a trainee director. That's pretty much where I started my career in 2005. So I spent about 9 months. Then I went to Lintas. So pretty much I was the second generation of Okerekeocha. Legacy, because it really meant a lot to me. My dad spent 25 years. He was there from 1975 to 2000. So I joined 5 years after he left. So so I was there for about 3.5 years, and I worked on, it was a very exhilarating experience, some of the best times of my life, working on brands like Maltina, Star. We had a fantastic creative director called Colin Morris, who was British, and we were winning pitches up and down. Like we won at the time when V-Mobile had started, we won the account for V-Mobile. We won the account for Friesland, Peak Milk, and a bunch of other ones. It was really good. You know, I remember pitching. We had this great pitch for Feroz. We had this fog of war with a bunch of agencies, but it was really interesting because the exposure was really good. The working experience was great. You know, making some really interesting colleagues. But yeah, you know, really impacting work. I think one work I'm particularly proud about was when we changed the close-up pack from what it was to what it sort of looks like now, because it's going through a lot of iterations anyway. Working with the Unilever team, and you know, working alongside my senior art director at the time, you know, working then with Kelechi Amadiobi to shoot, you know, do photography for it, and also design pack. Because then I became obsessed with pack design, in you know, designing with Adobe Illustrator. It was something I really loved, you know, and all I wanted to do was just design packs, and it was great. It was, you know, for people who had, if you had seen what it was like doing design as being a visualizer in the 70s and 80s and even in the early 90s. So you had this big drawing book, square, you know, all that. And if you couldn't actually draw and paint, you had no business being a visualizer in the studio, because you actually had to have talent. And then, you know, then there's something called letter to actually do typesetting. So in the studio, you would have a visualizer, you have a typesetter who do all the type for you. So if you are doing probably a press ad, the typesetter does all the letter press and all that, and you do your visualization, do it on something called. So basically, if you open up here's Photoshop, a new Photoshop document or Illustrator, it's something like an ad board. It mimics an actual ad board where you actually do designs on. So basically, the minutes what used to happen. So you have a light box where you cut out images. You do your pasting. That's actually where cutting and pasting is from. Over a light box, so you cut out your image, you put it in, you put your text, then put like an ad board. You have a copy. That's the artwork that goes to press. You know, you take it for. So interesting. I'm moving from there. Then sometime in 2000, I remember when the iMac was reborn. There's a renaissance with the iMac, and they came out in various flavors in 2000. I remember Lintas had, you know, a bunch of, and anytime I went to see my dad, he had one in his office. It was a dream machine. But I remember Macintosh SEs, you know, I grew up, because my dad had one, black and white, but we used for DTP, desktop publishing. And so you would do things like PageMaker, which was what, you know, PageMaker is essentially what you have Microsoft Word for now, but then it was, and then there was no Corel. Corel came later. I'm talking about 1992 now. I'm going back a bit. So I was a teenager, so I used to typeset for my dad. I used to do designs on something called Macromedia Aldous Freehand. So Aldous Freehand was a design software pretty much. Then there was Quack Express, Aldous Freehand. Later, I think
those things transitioned more or less into Adobe InDesign now.
Yes, essentially. So Macromedia, a company called Macromedia bought Freehand, and Freehand essentially sort of fizzled out. So, but I think Photoshop came later. Actually, Illustrator was the standalone application on its own, Illustrator 88. Adobe bought Illustrator, and it became Adobe Illustrator. Then I think Freehand sort of fizzled out because it was quite popular. There was another software called Quack Express, you know. But then, you know, I think what was popular among the people that had Macs was you know, Adobe Aldous Freehand and Adobe PageMaker. So I think that's what the first, Aldous Freehand and Adobe PageMaker. Then I think PageMaker phased out. Then I think it's pretty much what you have now. WordPerfect, then Microsoft Word. Yeah, exactly. So essentially, you know, the Macintosh SE is a tiny box that could do design. So I learned how to typeset at a very young age, do DTP, do designs on, you know, Photoshop came much later. So when I was pretty much do my internship, because I interned before I actually joined Mechanics, and I was an intern, I learned Photoshop. So it was in 2000, I learned Photoshop. It was a renaissance year for me. Learned Photoshop, learned a little bit of Illustrator, and just started working my way up. So spending 3 years in advertising, I became sort of, because I'm somebody who is, as a creative, I'm restless. I'm like looking for the next creative adventure. So, you know, and the whole the whole craze around, motion design, 3D graphics, and animated motion picture. Just like, so, design is something called the y-axis and the x-axis, essentially, which is, you can go left, top, and you go horizontally. But the x-axis, the z-axis, pretty much is what happens in 3D space. So essentially, you're interacting with in this axis.
A third dimension.
A third dimension. So I was like thinking, this is where I should take my design, my design practice. This was next. So I became very obsessed with, what I was watching on TV. I said, look, I want you to be able to replicate what I'm saying. When, the whole animated motion picture became a big thing, and I said, okay, this has to be my next move. So I totally love advertising. I think the whole idea of taking an idea and using that idea to operationalize how a product is sold to consumers is just mind-blowing. And I remember collecting lots of material, and it was my universe. But after some time, I thought it was time to move on and do more. So there was an ad paper for a TV station called NN24, and it was going to be the biggest thing in the Nigerian media space for news. I applied. So I told my close colleague, I said, look, Tolu, I'm applying for this thing. I don't know about you. So I applied, and when I applied, they wrote back to me to say, oh, come for an interview. I was like, wow. I went for the interview. I made it through. So then again, there were about several thousands of applications, but it selected 100. So I resigned. I left advertising for good, and I went to join a channel called Network News 24. They took us to Abuja, trained us for 4 months, ex-BBC staff, ABC staff. So essentially, there's a guy called Ken Tivin, who used to be vice president of CNN Technical. So basically, after he's retired, he takes a bunch of, so people from assignment editors to reporters, veteran reporters, Walter Rogers of CNN, Femi Oke, a bunch of people, and just goes to different third world countries, setting up TV news channels. So essentially, he helped set it up. And the guy who was behind NN24 was a guy who was really, inspired by the fact that Nigeria is a place where it's very difficult to get the truth, especially around news. And it was inspired by an article we read in Time about, I think, the Ogonilands and and all their battles with Shell. And the article ended by saying Nigeria, a place where the truth is hardest to find. And he said to myself, oh my goodness, how long will Nigeria keep being represented like this in the world's eyes? He said, look, if we had some sort of apparatus or channel or entity that told the truth, probably things could change. It could change our image. So he had NN24, according to him, then was an idea in a briefcase carried around for 7 years looking for funding until he got the right kind of funding. And once he got it, he moved, and somehow. Anyway, so NN24, that whole dream experience lasted for 2 years. When just by CNN, it was supposed to be like CNN of Africa. We were launched on DSTV, and things was going. But then the realities of doing business is one thing to have a dream, is another thing for it to actualize it. So we didn't have any sort of advertising revenue because we were trying to do things differently. We didn't join the Nigerian Union of Journalists, and our overheads were super high. We had.
You can't take that away from business. Overhead is a constant.
We had 2 concurrent generators that, and we were using state-of-the-art software. Like everything we did, every sort of broadcast system we had a license key that we had to renew. We had to pay, a license almost every month, and in dollars. Like we used the same sort of broadcast engine and broadcast design engine that CNN was using. So we had Russian trainers. So like went through this whole gamut of professional. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us who went through that training is pretty much what shaped a lot of us, because when the company finally stopped and couldn't pay our salary anymore, a lot of us left, and a bunch of my guys, a lot of the guys at Nigerian Info, TVC channels, Shiwa Kimberley, for instance, on Politics Today, was from NN24, Temple Ashaju, who's gone on to be a great reporter with Berg, or I think CNBC, my colleagues, guys, so a lot of the guys in the BBC now are from NN24. So we just unleashed this really, really. Now there's something that really made NN24 unique. It was something called visionary. So basically, vision engineering. So essentially, what that meant was, in a typical newsroom, you would have a reporter who essentially writes his own report, then a camera person and an editor. So the reporter goes out to capture the news with his camera person. But they train us in such a way that one person could do 3 people's jobs. So essentially, you are a visionaire. So you go outside, you get the story, you shoot the story yourself, you edit it yourself, and you publish the story yourself. So that's essentially what works on. So we had this fantastic, amazing complex with all sorts of equipment. Now then, when we were running in 24, the whole world came to see. We were in Oregon then. The whole world came to see us, from Wabuju to Chaka Khan, to governors. I mean, they would come here and they were marveled by the sort of technology we had in such a small place. And now we're able to, and I can tell you, authoritatively that it is what inspired Mwabulu to start Ebony Live TV, because she came and saw the operation and said, wow, this is great, But anyway, like many so many things in Nigeria, the dream died, because there wasn't enough revenue to sustain it. Anyway, I went and set up my own production company, and 10 studios. I registered it and I started shooting commercials, with my friend. So somebody, Frank Donga, was also then.
Really?
You name it, Frank Donga is a popular comedian. So he's a guy, yeah. So
that's interesting.
Together, I set up my company. Yeah, we shot. So a bunch of guys who started in Dami TV, but we're all together, at N24. So interestingly, I had a very interesting segue, because out of the blue, another company calls me and says, look, we want to start up our, branding and communications department. I don't know how they found my CV. And that's how I found myself in oil and gas doing brand and communications. I did that for about 3.5 years. Then there's an opportunity to work for the Tony Lumili Foundation, there's an opportunity in the group. I applied and they took me. I met the people in the foundation, and as soon as they met me, that was the end. So they said, look, I need to come and join. So that's how I found myself working for Tony Lumili Foundation. Then that pretty much heralded the birth of, so this is sometime in 2013, 2015, 2014, when content marketing became a big thing. So brands are pretty much using content to sell their products and services. And UBA sort of caught up with that whole bandwagon, and they said, look, you have a TV background, what is you doing? So I started RedTV with my boss, Bolata, who's my executive producer. And, that's pretty much that's where I am today. I've been there for the last 6 years. So, but alongside all of this, if we go back, I'm an artist, so I've never betrayed my calling, my always be one. Interestingly, I also make music. So sometime in 2018, I came up with a body of work, Vignettes of a New Reality, and I was asked to come and exhibit alongside some 2 other artists, and I had my first exhibition with the Relay Gallery, which was great.
Yeah, I attended that. It was marvelous. I mean, it was revealing, and we're gonna have time to really dig into that, because it's just a treasure trove of insights and stories. I mean, that's really what this interview is about. Exploring stories, and I'm looking forward to getting into that. But please go ahead.
Okay, so essentially, that happened, and I've kept the artistic side of me alive and the musical side because I feel that these are some of the parts that make the whole, which is me. So in a nutshell, so that's really Obinna Okerekeocha, and married, have 4 sons, married to a beautiful, intelligent, wonderful woman. So and have a great family. So yeah.
You are a strong man, not because of all the things you said, everything else you said before. You mentioned four men.
Yeah, I get.
But thanks again. I mean, you already preempted a lot of questions that I had regarding your creative background, how you got to where you are right now, and it's always interesting to hear how people get where they are, and also to help other people who may be looking up to you right now, and get a sense that it's not been just one leap, to where you are from your mother's womb. It's been some ups and downs, some moments of doubt, some leaps of faith, because that's one of the things I'm holding on to from what you just said. There's been some leaps of faith. And and seeing how it's all paid off. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I wanted to talk a little bit, or just explore, still stemming from your background and influence. your dad. So I was introduced to your dad, yeah, from, by the adverts and then when the first time I came across your account on Instagram, something said, that name, hold on, just let's explore a little bit. And over the months I was following your story, found that yes, that's where the name was. I mean, it's from. When you finally revealed there were some works of your dad's, illustrations, I believe, that you actually shared, and I was like, so yes, he's no wonder. I mean, there's always this kind of affinity between artists, and you always wonder something just makes you linger here, and that was it. How much? Let me put it. So how much of I would have said 100%, but I want you to put it in your own words. How much of an influence was your dad? I mean, I heard you say how he took you to his workspace, and how you were now a legacy employee at Lintas. But even in your pursuits and finding your own voice, your own style, carving your own niche, or treading your own path. How much of an influence, and how far have you think you've actually, would I say, strayed, or actually walked away from the way he does, or he went about his own path?
All right. Yeah, I mean, so I think that if I was not, if my father was not an artist, I don't think I would have become one, because I feel that's how strong the influence was. The influence was, and I just felt that, yeah. So I guess the talent was there, because I discovered it at an early age that I could draw. Because I remember in primary school, I would draw in biology class or integrated science. I would draw a fly better than everybody else, and I would help so it was there. Yeah, but I just feel that for him, I saw, for me, I saw a sense of accomplishment. Because I think one thing that really moved me was because he was creative director and head of the studio. Some of the junior directors, would come over to his house, and he would show them his work, and they would be like surprised, and that was his own way of inspiring them, and it used to inspire me, and I'm like, wow, one day I should be able to, my work should be able to inspire people as well, and that's because I understood, at an early age, he had a studio in the house, he had an office where he would work, do some things, and he even set up, even had so in the 90s, when I was a bit older, he had an ad agency called Style Advertising, so, and he had a client service press, 2 client service people, and he was doing, they would come reports in the morning before we go to work, and he had art directors come work. It was downstairs where we used to live, one place we lived in Akoka. So he set up the place, proper studio, with like 4 or 5 workstations with chairs and tables, and proper studio. So there is no way you're gonna go through that and not be inspired, and I'm just going to say this. I know, and sometimes I feel bad because I need to be telling these stories more, because my father designed the logo for Social Democratic Party, SDP. My father designed the logo for SDP. Remember, then in the 90s, MK Abiola and Bashir Uthman Tufa. There were 2 political.
Wow.
Yeah. The Nigerian was Social Democratic Party, SDP. Then the Nigerian NRC was the Nigerian Republican, can't be Republican,
Congress.
But what the R stand for? Nigerian what Congress? What the R stand for?
Republican. It never. I think it was, yeah. That was for the. That was not in 90s, was it? That was whose party now?
80s into
90s.
So
yes.
Abiola was MK Abiola was SDP.
Yes.
And Bashir Uthman Tufa was NRC. Tufa, yeah. Bashir Uthman Tufa, yeah. Then Tommy Kimi used to be the chairman of NRC, and I remember my dad would take me to his house, keep me to go and have meetings. So they would have political meetings, and they're talking about the design, direction and things like that. So as a kid, So we designed the eagle. It was an eagle, the NRC logo. My dad designed it. The Nigerian Deposit Insurance Company, NDIC, the rolling circle was designed by my dad. UTB, Universal Trust Bank, the logo was designed by my dad. CAPL, and this was all side hustle.
Wow.
Yeah, because this was what was, apart from his, publicitors, we had this was so, so many, and those were the days of annual reports when annual reports was a big deal. The cover designs for annual reports. So we'll do the one for for Universal Trust Bank, then the famous Intercontinental Bank. I remember the famous Intercontinental Bank. The IC the IC logo was designed by my dad. So interesting. It was quite so. There's no way you're going to grow up like that and not be influenced by all of that. My whole life was, before I was age 10, I knew exactly what I wanted to do in my life. So that's the level of influence, to answer your question. And again, let me also say that, I come from a family of artists, because my grandfather was a photographer. So my dad was born in Ibadan. My dad grew up in Ibadan, and my grandfather had a popular studio back in the 50s called All Weather Studios, and a lot of famous people at the time used to take in Ibadan many years ago. Used to take pictures there and all that before the war broke out. So there's been that whole creative thing in my whole family. So I mean, it was all, I guess it was written in the stars. Yeah.
Which do you prefer? What's your go-to medium? Multimedia, or for storytelling? What's your preferred medium?
It's changed, but I can tell you now that
that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't have to be just one thing. let's not put you in a box.
I know, but the truth is this: now I find myself expressing more in film. So film, motion picture is pretty much my go-to medium right now. I'm able to tell a story. I'm able to create a plot around it, then to tell a story. I think that from now that's my strong point in terms of the kind of my go-to storytelling medium. Yeah, film.
I found that very interesting, because that was the same, because having followed your work, I think you've shown a kind of you've shown some slant towards film, and I said we were going to talk a little bit more about your exhibition, and I will still show even with footage after, later on. I'll show people some footage from your exhibition. But what's actually one of the things I could draw out of that exhibition was how you actually stepped out or broke the mold in 2D, two-dimensional art endeavors into something that was actually a moving art. And it's no wonder that the natural progression or the organic progression would be something into something moving a little bit faster, even trying to kind of encapsulate a bigger, a broader spectrum of stories, or storytelling. So that's really interesting to hear. So what so far, besides the let me say professional projects that you've worked on that involved the film, I think they all involve filmmaking. Which one are you taking on, or which one have you undertaken privately? You want to talk about maybe your favorite before we move into what you're projecting into the future?
Okay. Out of all the projects I've worked on, right, which is my favorite, right? Okay. Yeah. So so pretty much I've worked on a couple of projects, like you know very well, but entertainment, scripted content. I can tell you that one of the ones that I really liked working on was I joined the Tony Lumili Foundation as a brand programs manager, and I did a lot of work. And I had my boss at the time, Paminda Via Obi. She's a documentary producer of critical acclaim in the UK. and she was my boss. So it was quite interesting, you know, two filmmakers in one team. So I think when we made the film for Tulilimu Foundation, I think that's something that really gave me, that was really wholesome and, you know, quite fulfilling, because I think at the end of the day, I think the whole premise of what the program is about, empowering African entrepreneurs and also listening to African entrepreneurs, showcasing them, bringing their stories to life, is something that really resonated with me, because I'm somebody who really, really, really loves non-scripted content. Being able to recreate, or rather tell the stories of what is happening in real life and bring that to a screen. So pretty much all the, you know, the projects around the Tony Lumelu Foundation and the film around entrepreneurs and how they've been empowered to transform Africa, I think that project is really, really close to me. Yeah. So out of everything I've done, you know, all the stuff I've done with RedTV, either as an associate producer or, you know, as a producer, this project has been very personal because of the importance and the relevance that it has in transforming our continent. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just take a step back from this reality, and, you know, talk a little bit about an alternate reality, the reality where, you know, we more or less try to project ourselves. So let me ask, you know, what movie, whether Nigerian or, you know, Western or Eastern, have you seen lately that really spoke to you, and why?
Okay. Let me see. So I love, again, and so I consume a lot of content. You know, so much. I'm always watching something. So
I get
I
the
think
sense. I get the sense that a lot of creatives do. They consume a lot more than they produce.
Yeah. So I think that something I watched recently that's been very, very so maybe like, okay, there's one lately. Yeah. So the social dilemma, right? That's what it is. On
The
this, so
Netflix
there's
documentary.
there exactly. Prior to that, 13th, the 13th is a film by Eva DuVernay, popular, you know, American producer and director. 13th is an expose on how imprisonment of the black man has become the modern day slavery. That documentary really, really opened my eyes to a lot of things in terms of the information that was there, and how they're able to really break down how systemic, I don't want to say, but
Racism,
systemic,
injustice.
all this, yeah, and injustice. Thank you very much. That's what I'm looking for. The systemic, apparent, you know, systemic injustice against the black man, and how, you know, imprisonment and incarceration has become profitable for, and how all the policies of past American presidents have sought to imprison the black man, how that the new slavery, and how that has become the new slavery, something that really, really impacted me in terms of how documentary was created, the style, the form. But then again, something I've watched that also has inspired me and really opened my eyes, and really, you know, is the power, the social dilemma, you know, and how that opens our eyes to how powerful social media has become, how, you know, it has transformed our lives even without our knowing it. So beyond just our phones, pretty much how, you know, there is so much attention for our the attention for our time, how much that we're selling, yes, you know, because of our preferences and things we've put in, how they're selling us things we don't need, and how this has become. So essentially, it's something that's really gripping and really eye-opening. That's something I've watched recently that has really, really opened my eyes to the power of this medium. You know, absolutely. Then I think also another bit of content I've watched that's really loved is Maradona, which is a documentary about his life, done by a very famous British documentary filmmaker. And if you watch it, it just really talks about his time in Naples, as in playing for Napoli, and how he led a very troubled life, and how, you know, sometimes dealing with the fame and the fortune that came with playing for football at the highest level, you know, he turned to drugs as something that would pretty much like an escape. So it dives deep into, you know, how, you know, he was wanted by the mafia, how, yeah, things. So it just because I really love football, and I like, when I mean I like football, not pretty much what happens now, but historical figures that develop the game over time, because I'm actually a history buff. Anything that has to do with history, anything that has to do with going back in time to actually discover facts about things, that's where you find me. So I'm totally up for it. So those are three pieces of work that have really inspired me. And there's also a show on Netflix called Abstract that talks about the creative process of select artists. So you should check that out as well.
Yeah.
It's called Abstract. It's on Netflix. It's really
I think I've seen about three of those. I'm more or less a design buff, so I was drawn to the one episode for Paula Scher, who is popular for having designed, designed the city logo
and the maps.
Exactly, and
Yes.
so she's a legend, and I was really intrigued to watch it. And also the episode on interaction design, the one on Instagram, then the one on typography. So they kind of more or less revolved around neuro marketing. So I'm drawn to the episode, or rather the explained episode on social dilemmas, so yeah, I'm going to be checking that out definitely. So I guess it seems you're drawn to themes that have impact written on them. So if impact by history or by insight, that's fantastic. So, how does this also influence the kind of stories that you are looking to tell? Or are you, is there a not really a contradiction, or are you how they say it's a paradox? Are you trying to tell, are you looking to tell, or do you wish to tell a different kind of story, even if these are the kind of stories that actually touch your heart?
Yeah, very good question. I think that, in telling stories, one is searching for truth sometimes, and sometimes it's about really what things that matter to you at the end of the day, things that matter to you. So I think I can use this juncture to tell you that I'm actually working on a project. So I think that something I've missed out, my father's, his sojourn in life was that he fought in the Civil War. My grandfather, before him, had fought for the World War II forces at Burma, the West African Frontier Force. I think he was also enlisted and fought at Burma and came back in the 1940s. But anyway, my dad enlisted in the Biafran army, was trained as a school of infantry at Olu in Imo State, and he actually joined the war. So I'm currently just about rounding up getting grants to make a film titled For Our People, For Our Country. Yes. Well, thank you so much. I got the memo that I made I made the second round, and there's a final lap. So just pray that I get it. So yeah, because it's been like 4 or 5 years in the making. Because I've been devouring everything Biafra, So because I'm obsessed with that war and the realities that surround the coup and all that. So yeah, so I'm looking to tell talk about his time in war. Talk about the significance of it all and his time, looking at the relevance of that war on both sides. For people who were trying to defend themselves, what was it about? For people who felt that they needed to put the country together and hold it up together regardless of whatever happened, what was it like for them? So for our people, talks about people from Biafra and their hopes and dreams and how they wanted to survive. And for our country, the people who were nationalistic and felt, look, at the end of the day, we cannot let these people go. So that's essentially what my film is really trying to dissect. And was it necessary? And at the end of the day, have we learned any lessons? Was it necessary? So my dad is the central character, talking about his story and how he joined the war, and until he got his battle injury, and how he reflected and how essentially, that whole, the catharsis and the beginning and the end of that experience. There are also people who experienced, personal, loss or who are affected by either the coup or the war and their own experience, and tying that to all the tensions that we have going on even today, while SARS at the end of the day deteriorates into a tribal thing, and things like that. So this is what I'm working on, and hopefully, God willing, I get the funding to do the film, and because it's a very ambitious project, Amen.
You will.
I've been inspired by what I've been watching, and just taking in and just taking ideas and being able to internalize all of that and use that as cannon fodder to actually fire up with exactly what I want to do. So I've assembled a really good team. I've been working on the project, and hopefully, I'm able to do it. So that's pretty much what I want to do. And in addition to that, I have other. In addition, another story I want to tell you is, recently there was a battle on Twitter, Gen Z versus Gen X, and all of that, millennials versus Gen Z. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. Then we didn't actually. Anyway, the thing is, so if you look at the advertising industry and how far it's come, it's done well. We've featured, accounts. We've got award-winning agencies. We've done marvelous work, and stuff like that. So, but nobody's really talking about how it started. The glory days of advertising and how one big agency crystallized into Insights and into Rosabelle and into OPM and into McCann, because all these guys, from Steve Omajafor to Biodun Banjo, they were all client people, managers, Atlantas. These guys were all my dad's colleagues, for the great ESCOM fund that went on to do Thai communications, even who fought to be who S01E01, all these guys were all Atlantas, So essentially,
I'm not
all
sure,
the campaigns.
but even maybe Chris Douje, Chris Douje.
In fact, I can tell you something for free. So, if it's Douje, who is his daughter, is my colleague. She just left. She worked with me for about 2 years before she left to join another company. So her dad's Uncle Chris is alive. So then Ted Mukuru.
He taught me. He taught me. Yes. He taught me.
So all these guys used to walk the corridors of Lintas. So basically, I want to tell you a story about, not necessarily the history, but how far advertising agencies have come and where they are now, using illustration, art direction, what it used to be, the people who understood what it was and what it is now. So nobody's telling, AppCon is not interested in that. AAAN, they don't care. So it's like, show us the money. So, but nobody. So, and I feel that and these guys are alive. Uncle he has a nickname. Showbiz. He just launched his book. His autobiography.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you read that.
Already, yeah. But my point is that these guys want to tell these stories, and nobody has come to ask them and say, everybody's, okay, come and speak, but nobody's making a film, something that would last, that'll stand the test of time. So I want to make that film, after this project, and that's the next thing I want to do, and talk about the history, using my work, the illustrators that were great illustrators then. My dad was a guy called Steve Samohai. So I don't know how well you remember Lintas from the 80s and 90s. They had these greeting cards that were vertical. You could open them up and you could hang them. They became like, people kept them all over the year. So they will have African pieces on them. So from Benin, from Iguku to Nok, and they were all hand painted. There was a guy called what's his name? Samohai is his first name, but I think it's Samohai anyway. It's Chris Samohai anyway. Samohai is alive. Fantastic illustrators. Those are then when guys who have gone on to become popular contemporary artists like Gringa Ofu, they were One Day George. They were all most of these guys were all illustrators, work and visualizer at Lintas. So essentially, I want to tell this story because these guys are alive and they have stories to tell. So that's another that's the other project I'm going to do, because it's something I know, it's something I totally understand, and I feel that story is not told, it's not anywhere, and I feel that this is a good time to actually tell that story. So yeah, these are the things that consume me. You know,
Yeah, totally worthwhile. Also, I mean, like I said, you have a penchant for telling impactful stories. So yeah, little wonder. My last question was, following from the conversations between the Gen X and the Gen T. I was saying that I quickly caught on that the Gen Z are the traditional, professionals, and then the X are the new age. Let me put it that way. So I know you work with a lot of content creators, actors, producers, and I just wanted to know, what do you have? I know part of what you said already speaks to, not forgetting where we come from. But looking forward, what message do you have for them?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, like I said, the creative answers, the solutions you're looking at are inside of you, and the only way to sort of unlock it is to constantly work, constantly get involved in projects, constantly seek to improve. That's the only way you're going to unlock that potential that you've got. And you must never be afraid to try things you've never done before, and try to be an authentic. Now, sometimes it might take, it's a bit of a process, because we're all caught up with trying to be like the other person, because social media is filled with a lot of people trying to show you, what they have or what they don't have. And sometimes that sort of influences you, and you think that, okay, you know what, I'm not adequate enough, I don't have enough, but then again, looking, because that's where, your true voice lies. And once you're able to find your true voice, you do marvelous things and you do great things. But the key thing is working hard and toiling, because you know about it, creative excellence doesn't come overnight. You have to really, really sit down and understand your craft, know what exactly, there's something I was listening today on Blinkist, and it said, always be in your circle of competence, because that's where, things that that's where you can thrive. So that's what I would say. Be in your circle of competence. Always be, you take on, you thrive best when you do what you know best about. That's where you're really alive, to be the best of who you are. So don't try to be what you're not. You look for that thing that you love, invest time and yourself in it, and that's where you become a master at it. And once you become a master at it, the world takes notice. If you become the person that solves the biggest mathematical problem, the world will know hear about it, and the world will talk about you. But then again, you're not out there to tell the world that you're here. I was telling, there's something. Yeah. So recently, Elon Musk has become the world's richest man, and in a day he made $10 million, and suddenly he became he think he dropped a second, then went back to first yesterday. And he joined some people on Clubhouse. There's this app called Clubhouse where people have conversations now, which is a sort of a phenomenon, but it's only on iOS, on iPhones. Yeah. So people just good at that conversation. So yeah. And in that chat room, he was having a conversation, and people asked him about, of course, Binance, cryptocurrency, and all that. And he said he needs to be very careful about what he says, because what he says can affect the stock market. So he can't just talk. He has to be. This is one guy who was many years ago, not too long ago, was in South Africa, came to South Africa as a 18-year-old and built PayPal. So you have to keep, the point here I'm trying to make is that, you have to keep working and keep believing in yourself. And the truth about it is that once you hit it and you're able to solve a problem, because at the end of the day, what we're doing in life, is solving a problem that helps other people. So you are creating content because you are creating content that is relevant to people and people watch it. You are selling you are selling a product, or you're giving a service, because you are providing some sort of solution to somebody's problems. It could be food, it could be whatever it is, but give it your best. The Bible talks about, he that findeth, he that whose hands find it to do anything, you do with all your heart. So if your hands have found something that you need to do with all your heart. So it's not about being in public domain and saying, oh, this is what I do, and you've done one little thing and you are telling the whole world about it. It's about consistently pursuing excellence until the point where people you never, they talk about what you've done. That's the measure of excellence. It's not you who's talking about it. The people who are actually there saying, oh, look, this, and people will seek you out. And that's the thing. People love excellence. So what I'm saying in Australia is work within your circle of competence, master your craft, understand what it is that you're doing, give it your best. Don't be afraid to fail. Embrace failure, because that's the only way you know what you're about. So it's Thomas Edison, that says, when he was trying to, of course, the light bulb, and we all know the story. He says he failed 1,000 times. He said, I have found 1,000 more ways how this thing will not work. So I don't see it as failure. I've just found 1,000 ways that will not work until I find the way that works. So have that sort of mindset, fail forward, embrace it, let it be something that challenges you to be better at what you do, and look to yourself. Never feel that somebody else has the answers or somebody else is better than you. You have what it takes to excel. You have what it takes to be successful. It's all within you. But that work, you have to put it in, and discovering who you are, and discovering what your potential is, and discovering what your strengths are. That only comes when you sit down and do the work. You cannot escape it. You need to sit down and do the work. Do whatever it takes to excel in life. Sure. And to be what exactly you want to be. And your dreams are valid. Whatever it is that you dream that you want to do, you can achieve it. Let nothing stop you. Let nothing derail you. I keep saying, for instance, who knew we have so many people in the industry who are known for a lot of things, but Chris Hemsworth and they recognized the Ikorodu boys because they replicated a trailer for Extraction, and suddenly the whole world is talking about them. From Ikorodu.
I saw that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that sends a big message that you can be wherever you are in the world. You're dedicated to what you are doing. They could have done 1,000 trailer enactment, but that single one that they did. But you see, it doesn't happen overnight because there's a track record of the work they have been doing that got them to that point. So that's the point. Keep working. One day, all that stuff you've done, someone say, I like what you're doing. You must have been doing something before, and you also must have been. Say, oh, you see, yeah. So success, guys, success doesn't happen overnight. It's a very deliberate sequence of events that leads up to something big. So that's what I'm going to leave with you guys today, and I hope that inspires you to go out there and be the best you can be.
Awesome. Those were really deep words. They got real deep. Thanks so much, Obinna. I can't say it enough. Having you here and hearing you talk to us about what you do and how much you love it is really inspiring. I'm really honored to have you, and hopefully we'll have another thing to talk about very soon, and I would be more than happy to have this platform again. Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
It was a great. Yeah, I go try to. This was really great. I absolutely love doing this. It's always my pleasure to share my journey and just helping everybody, just helping somebody else find their way. It always gives me.
Yeah.